I got a call a few months ago from a friend of mine that said he had a friend that was selling a Dino GT that he's owned since the 90s. It had 17,000 miles and he's texted me a few pictures and I liked what I saw. Coincidentally, someone contacted me via email looking to buy a Dino a few weeks later. I told him about this one and we agreed that I should head out to Oakland to take a closer look. All right, so 246 GT. You find it?
No. They're metal, right?
Yeah,
they're
they're a
metal.
little knurled.
Yeah.
The wheels. A little dusty from storage, but all the glass looks original. Also looks like a chrome and windshield. This is all kind of all original stuff. Interior wise, the seats are leather, but has all the correct graining on the vinyl and felts. You know, it has a speaker there, but that's, you know, that's kind of unfortunate, but that's just what they did back in the day. The dash looks to be in really good condition. Aftermarket radio. When you look at the steering wheel condition, it really does dictate to this 17,000 mile car. I mean, the stitching isn't even pulled. So, and also when you look at down here, the pedals don't look pretty original. Carpets look pretty good. There's a mat here, but you know, a little bit of staining, but the original matting is there. Center console. I think all of this would really clean up well. Headliner. I mean, again, it's very dusty, but all the details are there. Seatbelt, original seatbelts. Here's the May of 1972. 03952. And here's the chassis stamping 03952. Here's the engine compartment. Again, pretty original. US car. Trunk original carpeting with the felting on the top. These bumpers look correct. This is the original trunk seal that's just hanging down. There's a little bit of weeping down in the V of the engine compartment, but I think that's either oil or something. I have to look a little closer. It doesn't look wet from anywhere else, so it could be just the carburetor overflowing. In fact, I do smell, I started it, so I do get carburetor leaking from there, so that's probably what's collecting down in the V. So it could be that. The original padding is still in the back against the firewall. Doors open and close pretty well. I mean, that's pretty well, you know, that's kind of never been apart kind of feel to it. All the weather stripping felts look original. What's that?
Lion Amber.
Yeah.
Like it was part in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it really has a lot of this originality. I mean, it would clean, a lot of this chrome would clean up really well too. But all this looks correct. You know, there's a little bit of cracking here on this liner. The foam sealer is still here, that header piece that's still there, it's just barely holding on. But again, 17,000 miles. I do think that the radiator's been recored. It's got a modern radiator core.
The
But
paint
yeah,
on this car wasn't
pretty neat
great.
car.
You could see there's a couple panels that have been painted, but looking closely, it looks like it was just paint. I didn't see any signs of body work or damage that would cause some of the
thing on
panels to
the
get
driver's side
painted.
door.
But you never know why people paint these cars. Sometimes it's just from the crazing, or the old paint is just getting a little worn, and the owner decided to paint it. Took the car out for a test drive, and it could really use a tune-up, but it seemed to run really well, and the car transmission felt great, and really felt like it was a good solid car.
We'll pull the other ones out, but let's just double check.
Here we go, and I did it with closed throttle.
Oh, closed throttle, okay.
After checking the compression numbers on this car, I called the buyer and told him that I think he should buy the car. Next thing we know, it was in a truck headed back to my shop. Well, the Dino got delivered over the weekend, and it hasn't been washed. It's filthy, but I'm just about to start going over it. You know, this car has really not seen a lot of miles when you consider about 17,000 miles. And as I go through it, yeah, it's been through a couple hands and, you know, a couple little things here and there that people have modified, but, you know, it's very rare that you find a car with such low mileage and the details are still there. So I'm really looking forward to going through this car and showing all these little details that make it an original car. I think it'll really come back if it just gets a good cleaning. I can see a little bit of touch-up paint, like a little bit of blending that people have done through the years. Maybe something happened and or got a little scratch, or if, you know, try to paint it. But again, you know, what's neat about this car is it just the way it sits. It hasn't been apart, you know, so you have the bumpers that are just, you know, original, and the fit is the same way, and you know, when you go through this car, it just has all the markings of an original car. And you look at the interior, and what happens is, like a lot of these cars, you know, they change all sorts of stuff. They get you know, they get this new material for the dash, because the original, this what we call mouse fur dash, is replaced with the new materials. But yet this is the original kind of grayish dark. Now I admit some of this stuff is from just sun fading, but you know, this one's pretty well preserved. I also looked at this steering wheel, and it's pretty amazing how it's really kind of has that look of an original steering wheel. It hasn't been recovered with new leather, and yet it seems to support the amount of mileages on this car. Also the same thing with the seats. You know, a lot of guys will get these seats and then they want to put Daytona seats in there, and then they get rid of these original, you know, Dino seats. I'm gonna have to put some moisturizer, but you know, they're still really nice. And the same thing with all these details inside, with the headliner and the visors that are still original, with that foam insert and that heat sealed edge. Pretty neat stuff. So as I go through this car, it's going to be fun to just kind of explore and bring it back. I mean, like I said, the paint really just needs a good polish and compounding. I mean, it's just covered in little scratches. It looks like it's just been under a cover for all these years, and I think it'll respond really well. But you know, just looking forward to exploring this car and getting it back to life, and putting it back on the road. So underneath the car, it looks, you know, just like a good car. I mean, it, again, with such low mileage, there's really not much besides just the usual bit of oil leaks, a little bit of staining and things like that. Some of the bushings here probably need to be replaced, but the finishes here are all kind of there. I mean, it just shows that it hasn't really been apart. I can see some silicone, or actually no, I can see some grease and things like that might have been slung up in there. You know, your typical little leaks here and there that
will just be addressed, and a couple little wires here and there we'll check and see where they go to. I can see that something here, there's a wire here that's an extra wire. I'll have to see where that leads to. Let's see, this yellow wire. Some of these hoses should probably be replaced. They look like they're original hose clamps. It looks like somebody's already replaced the fuel line hose. The exhaust looks like it's in pretty good shape. And you can see how there's just like no signs of rust or anything down here. I mean, all the usual places of swelling, like on this seam here, all these like substructures, all pretty straightforward and like just not rusty at all. This whole belly pan, it looks like it has very little paint on it because it's the original fiberglass pan, probably original paint. This plate is a little rusty, but that's okay, we could take that off. It has the original insulation, you can see that's still there. From the service records, it looks like the brakes have been serviced, or at least the calipers have been serviced. There's a little bit of weeping here. I have to find out what that is. It may have been a previous leak, but it's a little wet over here. But the front pan and everything looks okay. I mean, a little bit of damage here. Like it looks like, might have caught something here. Looks like something hit that and peeled that back a little bit and dented this, but that's pretty easily straightened out. There is this grate that's added here. I believe it's added. I don't think it was original. I think most of the Dinos had that open slot. And I can also see there's some overspray here on inner shield, so maybe the nose has been painted, probably, because these cars, when you drive them, they're going to get stone chips and things like that, and I'm sure somebody just wanted the nose painted up. There is some blending and there are some panels that have been painted up top, but it kind of comes with the territory. Even with a low mileage car, occasionally people are going to drive them and they're going to get stone chips or scratches and things like that, and sometimes they're going to get painted. But the rest of the car pretty much shows signs that it just hasn't been apart. It looks like it's been serviced, but it doesn't look like it's been apart. So pretty neat, pretty clean underneath. So another neat thing about a low mileage car, or at least this low mileage car, is it comes with all the original stuff in here. So I've got the jack, I've got the wheel chock, and what I really loved about this car was that we had tons of receipts, and the original, I'll show you here, the original tool pouch with all the tools and all the pieces in there, which I think is pretty cool. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can get all this stuff in reproduction, but what I think is really neat is this is the original kit that came with this car. I mean, with such low mileage and the look of it. And the other neat thing about this, which I really love, is the original books and tools. So this is what would have come with this car when you bought it. And look at this. This is like the original warranty card, which, like, that's pretty amazing. When you look at the how it was filled out. So as you can see, 03952 is 03592. So this was the car, this is the original warranty book for this car.
And then of course there's all this other stuff that's in here. That's just all the paperwork that came in here. You know, it shows that somebody installed an alarm system back in '83. There's a receipt in here. Let's see what this is. This is just a receipt from a company called Griswold Company in Berkeley, California, where they did some service. And this is dated 1978, if you can read it. But you know, again, this is just great stuff. And the owner's name here is John Huntington. That's on the records as far as like who had this car. So again, you know, all this stuff just kind of really adds to just the neat thing about these cars, because what happens with Ferraris, which is almost unfortunate, is that a lot of these cars, they just they change hands so many times that a lot of this paperwork, you know, just kind of disappears. And to have it with the car, pretty amazing, and really I think worth more, just simply because it's got the original books and tools. I mean, this is just untouched. It's been sitting in this manual for all these years, or sitting in this pouch for all these years, and it remains with the correct car. Just cool stuff. I mean, I think as a historical document and you know, shows where this car has been, it's pretty cool to have it. So got the Dino cleaned. Looks much better now. Got the installed an MSD, so now the revs look a lot better. I'll take it out for a quick drive just to see how things are sounding. Letting it warm up a little bit. Just taking it easy. Might roll up these windows a little bit just to cut down on the wind noise. So this car with the low mileage just feels great. I mean, just tracks straight, but what a neat car. It just feels really nice, honest Dino. I mean, that pulls great. So I had some decisions whether or not I should set this rev limiter, where I should. Rev limiter, right now I have it set at 7,000 RPM. The indicated on the tach shows 7,800 RPM on this little V6. And I really struggled whether or not I should set it up that high. You know, I think we tend to watch these videos of people bouncing off the tach. You know, you see these drifters and these new engines where it's like, and it's just like the rev limiter is being hit the whole time, and the guy has just got the car floored. And I don't know, I don't get it. I mean, part of it is, okay, it's a modern engine, you know, you're showing off, you're doing burnouts. But again, sometimes for me as a mechanic, I feel like you're just whipping the crap out of that car. You know, when you're bouncing off the red line, that engine not only is turning at its limit, but it's also missing because the rev limiter is stopping the ignition. So the engine is being shocked as that pistons are going up and down and hitting that red line. It's causing this shock through the crankshaft. That can't be good. And when I was setting the red line on this one, initially when I first got the MSD out of the box, you could adjust the red line to wherever you want. And I initially had it at 6,500 RPM. Considering a V12, like my V12, the red line's 6,200 RPM. At least that's what about where it should be. Now, admittedly, a V12 Ferrari can handle, supposedly has like an 8,000 RPM bottom end, from what I understand. But it's the valve train up top that starts to float a little bit, and all the other things that cause it to choose a red line in which, you know, it's a little bit lower than what, you know, the bottom end can handle. But I started to set this red line at 6,500. But then I looked at the tach, and the tach says 70, you know, starts to go into the orange at around, you know, 74, 7,500 RPM. And then it doesn't get into the red until about 7,800. So I was like, well, you know, the factory itself says, you know, you can rev this engine up that high. So maybe I'm limiting the amount of RPMs that this this MSD is going to allow this car. Because what happens is MSD, I believe, because I've hit the rev limiter on MSD, it's kind of a soft red line where it'll start to skip the amount of revs up top. So you hear it go, it'll start to miss every other ignition systems, and you'll hear it softly hit the top of the red line. But I said, okay, well, maybe I don't know the driver on this car. Is he going to hit the red line as much? I mean, just now I took it to 6,500, almost 7,000 RPM just to see what it would do. I haven't hit the red limiter yet, but you know, I said, okay, well, let me set it a little higher. So I went to 7,000. I think I went to 7,100. I don't want to hand this car over and then have my customer say, hey, how come this car is doing weird things at 7,000? I mean, at that point, I'll know that he's hitting the rev limiter. But I didn't want that to happen at 6,500, just in case you wanted to, you know, really, I mean, as you can hear, the engine makes some wonderful noises up there. So sometimes these guys just might want to hit it every once in a while. But it was funny, when I was trying to set the rev limiter, I really had to struggle to say, where should I set the rev limiter on this car? Because I didn't want it to set it so high that, you know, you want to save the engine a little bit. Not to mention, you know, this engine's 40 some odd years old. I mean, it'd be nice to just kind of baby it a little bit. I mean, admittedly, it's seen 17,000 miles, just a few miles compared to other cars, but that still doesn't mean that you have a right to beat the shit out of it. So part of me was just like, I'll compromise. I'll put it at 7,100 and call it a day. The owner can always go back in with a little screwdriver and set the rev limiters higher, but that's up to him. I've set it where I feel comfortable and I feel like it should be, and that's where I'd like it to be. But again, part of it is because you watch all these videos and you know, you could think that that's the way you're supposed to drive a car, but no, that's not the way I would want to drive a car, because I just feel like that's just beating the living hell out of the car. Not to mention, you know, you're bouncing off the rev limiter. Look, if you have a disposable engine, you can always build another one, like an LS motor or something else. Great, go ahead and beat the living hell out of it and show off to your friends and blow it up. But I don't know, these cars are worth a little bit more money to me. No reason to destroy it. such great noises. What a wonderful drive. Wow, great car. Really looking forward to the owner driving this car and using it. He's gonna have a great time. Feels good. It's funny, that little boof boof, that happens to all USA cars. It's so funny. Like, you could dial that thing out. That's about as quiet as it gets. It's funny when you hear it. It's like, I've had them where it was boom pow. But you can actually dial these things back to the point where it doesn't do it. But I tell you, every USA car I've ever had, it does that little boof boof when you shut it off. It's just kind of funny. It's the way the exhaust works. It's the way the emissions work. I don't know what it is, but it just, they all do that. And I hate saying that, because it's like, you know, Ferraris are like one of these things where you have some issue. It's like, oh, they all do that. But in actuality, you don't know how to fix it. But unfortunately, with that little boof boof, that's that they all do that. Let me see if I can make that happen again. So USA cars are interesting. They all have emissions that are on it, taken off. They've done all sorts of stuff to it. They've had this retard circuit. A lot of that's been removed. This particular car, I've taken it out, or it was taken out when I found it. There's no reason to put it back. There's a retard circuit that allows it to pass emissions at idle. But what that did was it overcomplicated the way the ignition fires. This car fires up fine on the regular timing that it looks for, as opposed to the retarded timing that they have for emissions. So there's no reason for it to put it back. The stuff is still there, but it's not the points are not connected. But what's interesting, the way the design of these heads are for the US cars, there's something, either the heads or the way the emissions are or whatever, they all have this funny little sound when you shut it off, poof poof, and you can dial some of that out. I've heard really bad ones where they just go poof poof, you know, big pows, but you know, you can get it so it doesn't make it as much. But I've never been able to get it so that it wouldn't do it at all. Anybody out there watching knows how to do it, let me know. But I tell you, this one does it, but it doesn't do it that bad. It doesn't do it all the time. But let me see if it does it right now. Yep, doesn't do it. There it goes. Did you hear it? That was delayed. I think it's some kind of little bit of unburnt gas in the exhaust, and when you shut off the engine, it just has enough to ignite it and just goes boof boof. But not nearly as bad as I've heard on some really bad ones. So I'm gonna live with it. I think it's good enough, unless of course somebody contacts me and says, hey dummy, this is the way you get rid of it. But that's a little idiosyncrasy of a Dino. Thanks for watching.